Well, this is going to be an interesting video to make because I was debating how exactly I was going to approach this. The 400i. Is the 400i as bad as I initially thought? And I'm talking about the first time we saw this, going back almost a year ago now. The first time we saw little hints of this thing. No. But I'm reading the Q&A for this, and I'm seeing CIG talking about this. And it strikes me as, quite frankly, a lot of disingenuous marketing on their part. The Origin 400i is not a competitor to the Constellation. It is not a competitor to the Drake Corsair. The Origin 400i is Origin's version of an entirely different chip. What chip, you may ask? Well, you know, if you're gonna imitate something, you have to imitate something truly great. Or at least you should. Ladies and gentlemen, the Drake Cutlass. The Origin 400i is Origin's version of the Drake Cutlass. That's exactly what it is. It has a much more luxurious interior, but it pretty much has the same cargo capacity. Is it fast? Oh, it's faster and more maneuverable than the Constellation, of course, because it's technically a different class of ship. It's a Cutlass. It's an Origin version of the Cutlass. If you look at the firepower on it, the big selling point of this over the Drake Cutlass is that probably the Cutlass is going to end up being faster and more maneuverable than the Origin 400i, but the Origin 400i is a lot more resilient. Of course, the Cutlass also has a little bit more gun-wise. About 50-50 in terms of firepower. But that's what the Origin 400i is. It's not a competitor to the Drake Corsair. It's not a competitor to the Constellation. This is what it's competing against. It's essentially a Cutlass at double the price and a hell of a lot more shields. And some people are going to be like, I welcome that. That's what I like. It has a discrete spot for a space or a very specific space bike. We'll come back to that. But that's essentially what this is. So all this talk about, oh, it's a competitor to the Connie, it's a competitor to the Corsair. Bullshit. It's a competitor to the Cutlass. Now, when you look at this ship in that context, it's a good ship. When you understand what the ship is, it is a good ship. If you try to, you know, look at it from the position of how does it, measure up against the Corsair? How does it measure up against the Constellation? Easy answer, it doesn't. Not even close. And I have a feeling that the shields were kind of like a cheap attempt to kind of upgrade the ship into that category. But it isn't. It's a Cutlass. It's all it is. It's a Cutlass with an unusually long nose on it. Now, that being said, 40 SCUs of cargo space, yeah, that's Cutlass size, because the other two are more than double that, and well, a lot more firepower as well. Well, but it's faster, of course, because it's a smaller class of ship, and the smaller they get, the faster they tend to be. There's no reason to kind of look at it and disparage it once you understand what it is. If you were to try to look at it and say, oh, it's this what CIG has said it is, then it's a horrible ship. And I would argue that as it is, it's probably a little overpriced. I think that $160 would have been a lot more reasonable for what you're getting. rather than I think the origin tax is, way too powerful on that. But as a basic ship for one or a couple of friends to kind of get around the universe and do missions and hang out and explore, it's a solid ship. If we kind of push the price thing aside and push the BS comparison that CIG made aside, it's a decent ship, and there's no reason not to like it. With Pyro on the horizon and having seen so much of Pyro, and Pyro is so well done. I mean, that in and of itself is going to be a different video at some point in the near future, but ships like this, ships that have that reach, ships that have that ability to travel those distances are, and bring equipment and all the stuff with you. They are going to be all the rage. This is kind of like the gold rush, and this is such an untapped field of ships. Compared to fighters, this is almost like virgin territory that CIG is walking into. They kind of goofed with this one and they miscategorized it, but it is still a good ship. And it's not a ship that I look at and there are ships that when people buy them, I'm just like, ah, man, yeah, it's okay, it's not great. But this is not one of those ships. It's like, it's a good ship. And I mean, if you're willing to pay the origin tax plus a few extra bucks, it's still fine, and it's going to serve you well as new horizons open up. But you got to keep in mind that this idea that CIG put out there is hilariously off base, because realistically, this ship is probably a lot closer to a Mercury Star Runner in terms of functionality. When you have those two kind of rearward facing cannons, even though the underside one can, I believe, still face forward, you're looking at a ship that's more for getting in and getting out, escaping, and not really being the battler. This is a ship that's meant to kind of escape and survive, and that's probably another reason why it's got the shields that it does. It's going to be a fine ship to see the universe in, but it is what it is. Now, of course, we do have to talk about the ridiculous decision to make it so that there's the motorcycle bay, but it only fits one space bike, which is, of course, the X1, the space bike that we don't have. So the idea to make it so that the 400i can only carry the X1 space bike is completely asinine. It's such a stupid decision. And of course it ends up being the space bike that we don't have, right? Whoever came up with that idea, whoever proposed that idea, just next time don't speak. Just don't, just go get everyone else a coffee and just don't contribute, because you're not. It makes no sense to make it proprietary. It serves absolutely no purpose, because does this mean that the X1 is getting pushed to the front of the line, or is this going to be a case of one day you'll be able to carry a space bike, but we're just not sure when? Don't do that. Just don't. It's a stupid decision. It's something that doesn't make the purchase more attractive, it makes it less attractive. Because people want to be able to open up options. They buy ships like this to open doors to new worlds and to new vistas. They don't buy ships like this to say, to close them or to incur limitations. Especially limitations that are completely nonsensical and artificial, based on the whim of the developer. It's a stupid idea, and I mean, frankly, it's things like this that even though there has been so much progress in ship design over the last decade, it's things like this that it's just this backwards thinking that, I mean, it has never served CIG well, and it has always been a problem. Now, you might be saying, Minion, you're dumb. The X1 space bike is a fine bike. It's a great bike, and there's all these kind of cool features with it, and I believe it's the only space bike that has like a stronger shield or a bigger gun, or, you know, hey, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. The X1 space bike, along with the Xi'an space bike, the Nox, are trash. They're terrible because every subsequent space bike that CIG has put out since the Drake Dragonfly has been garbage. Look, Minion, it's well documented fact that you're a huge Drake fanboy, and of course you're going to think all the other space bikes are garbage. Well, I can prove it to you. You think of the Nox, you think of the X1. How many SCUs of cargo space did the Nox and the S1, or the S1? It doesn't matter. You don't have to remember the name because it's garbage. The X1 have none, 0. Not the Dragonfly. The Dragonfly can carry cargo. Now, when we're seeing all these missions that they're showing us, oh, where you can go in and you can take back, you know, cargo, and you can loot people, and you can put things in your backpack. Well, now you can carry extra cargo on a space bike, plus an extra person. That's a heck of a lot of utility. Oh, well, the other bikes, you know, they're more performance bikes. You know, they're a lot sleeker, and so they're a lot faster, like on the road, on the roads that we don't have, but we're gonna have. And in the future, we're going to have roads on the planets, Minion. And so your bike is only going to be faster on 99.99999% of the terrain on most worlds. And this is the problem. Like, I have no problem with them putting cargo space in ground vehicles. We've had these conversations before when we were talking about the Tumbrel. God, the Tumbrel. But, you know, the Tumbrel Jeep. And I was just, all you need to do is put a little box there that we can put stuff in. And why is it not there? It's ridiculous that it isn't. And this has been the problem with the space bikes too, is these stupid ideas that needn't be there, and that are just useless restrictions. But so long as these restrictions are in place, you're never going to want an X1 over a Drake Dragonfly. And the fact that you have this special, the special space bike port on your ship that launches only one specific space bike, the space bike consequently, or one of the space bikes that players are just not going to want because it's inferior to the one space bike that CIG did first that is actually still the best. And it's not just a question of like, well, it's because you like the shape or you like the paint. No, it's because it is unequivocally the best. You can't compete with something that allows you to carry an extra person, that allows you to carry cargo, even if it's a small amount. Its utility is vastly superior. When you think about going in on a ground mission, they were showing you that ground assault mission in the video, and the person's getting there and getting in there under the air defenses. How do you think the person made the transition from their ship to that location? They probably used a small vehicle like a space bike. Something that skims along the ground that the AA defenses can't shoot. Which would you rather have? You know, when you're thinking about limited cargo, because you don't know what situation you're going to face. Is there going to be, a lot of sentries? Do I need to use a sniper rifle? Or do I need to use just a sniper rifle to clear the exterior, but then I want a pistol and a submachine gun when I go into the interior? Right? All these options are deeply limited by the fact that you don't get to make that choice with the other space bikes. Only the Drake Dragonfly gives you the possibility of possibly bringing along different tools and different equipment depending on the situation that you're facing. Now, those little storage baskets might not be enough to hold the gun, but they're certainly enough to hold different pieces of equipment or to salvage some armor that you may want to keep from one of your enemies and still keep the cargo space in your backpack for other things. And that's why it's such a stupid choice to make, but it's partially not the fault of the 400i. It's also because of the asinine decisions they made around the space bikes when they originally concepted them. The only space bike worth anything is the Drake Dragonfly. And so largely that's my opinion of the 400i, is that the 400i, if you look at it in the right context, is a fine ship. It is absolutely a fine ship and a worthy choice if it meets with the requirements that you feel that you are going to be faced with. Now, the specific space bike thing is kind of a big issue. In reality, it's an issue that a lot of players may not understand because they haven't been faced with these choices yet. But these choices are coming, and in a lot of ways, they're actually here now if you're on the PTU. It's there, it's real, and there's no escaping it. Now, you're probably going to go out there and say, yeah, we got to get this changed. We got to get this changed from, you know, just X1 specific space bike hangar to all the space bikes. And I agree. And if it means altering the geometry or, oh no, we have to go back to art, then so be it. It was a stupid thing to do, and it's one of the problems that happens when you go straight to flight ready without showing it to the community and without allowing to the community to discuss it. And I think that, you know, sometimes I think game developers make these kind of stupid decisions like this, and they do things in such a way to kind of deliver it to the community when they're like, oh, well, it's irreversible now, so you'll just have to deal with it. You know, as just a lazy way of avoiding any kind of, you know, having to go back and actually do the right thing. And of course, you're going to have to deal with our beloved members of the community who think that it's fine. It's no big deal. And the reason why they think that is that they don't really understand that the ship they bought isn't just a JPEG or a PNG file. It's an actual ship that's going to be in a game someday, and it needs to be able to work.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.